This is the Amazfit BIP smartwatch fitness tracker, and you can see it looks quite a lot like an Apple Watch, only you can pick these up for around about, well, I got this one for €25 from Amazon, from their warehouse, but it was new. And what do you get? You have a watch with a touch sensitive screen. You have to press this button to unlock it, and it's fairly basic, but you see on this face you get time, heart rate and number of steps. It's very light, 30 grams, and the battery lasts a long time. You get about well, you can get weeks of battery life. They say 45 days if you're not doing anything, so that's excellent. Has a GPS in, and that has both the American system and the American GPX and the Russian GLONASS, so it's pretty accurate. Screen's just over an inch wide, and it has 512 megabytes of RAM, which means you can store up to 20 activities in the watch before you have to download anything. Press the button to unlock, and there aren't that many faces, and I'm not sure you can update the face on this model. Status will give you, if it will focus, number of steps. You can also get, which is quite good, you can get your latitude and longitude on this watch, and you can get, press that button again, get your latitude and longitude, so you can get an exact fix of where you are. Plus you can get, so here to start activities, and if I scroll across, the weather, which is uploaded from the phone, and that's about right, the weather. You can set various alarms, which is pretty useful. You've obviously got a stopwatch, you've got a compass, but you have to set it, and here you can get your longitude and you can get your altitude as well, which is pretty useful for navigating. Well, it is if you've got a map anyway and can see where you are, or you want to give your coordinates to someone. Obviously you can do that with a smartphone. What I'm interested in though is you have a optical heart rate measure on the back, plus you have what I'm interested in then is how good the heart rate readings are and how accurate the GPS is. Important information, interesting information for sports activities, especially the heart rate if you're doing any kind of zone training. In the activities, you haven't got a lot of variation. You've got outdoor running, cycling, walking, and you can get your history here, and there you can see a lot of cycling at the moment, going to and from work, so I tend to stick that on. It's very quick at getting a fix, which is great as well. Now this is the second one of these watches I had, and the one I have still works as a watch, but after 2.5 years the GPS stopped updating and I can't do any activity tracking with it beyond steps, so it's a bit frustrating. So be aware, they're not necessarily the highest quality in the world. The straps are standard 20mm straps and are easy to replace. Just a little click on, click off. Strap on my last watch lasted about 1.5 years before this little bit broke, which was annoying, and I just got a sports strap, cloth sports strap, which was more comfortable, from Amazon. It's clearly no good having a smartwatch or a fitness tracker if it's not accurate, so the first thing I wanted to see is how good the GPS is. And I went for a run around my local park, as this picture shows, and you see I started in the bottom left. I started in town, and it was a little bit flaky, but it picked up the satellites very quickly in a few seconds. But we're talking about streets with 5-6 story buildings, so the tracking wasn't totally precise. You see, I wasn't really running around like a drunk down this road. But as we get into the more open park, and I run around the park, and it follows things pretty closely here with quite a lot of subtlety. It picks up little changes in direction, and I cross from one side of the path to the other. So that's fairly impressive. So I think the GPS in this device is very good, especially for such a small device. It must have a tiny aerial. The Amazfit BIP has a barometric altimeter, which means it's not relying on the GPS to calculate height, so it's actually quite accurate. And I took the GPX data directly off the watch, so it's not been uploaded to a website like Strava that can calculate the elevation for you. And I put it head to head with a Garmin 520 bike computer. The Garmin track is in red, and the Amazfit BIP is in blue, and this is my run around the park again. The park has an average altitude of about 168 meters, and you see the Garmin track that. There's some little bits of up and down of 2 or 3 meters here and there, tiny little hills and things. And the Garmin tracked that pretty well. And you can see the Amazfit is a bit off. It's about 10-12 meters off at the start, and that drops to about 5 meters at the end. The only thing is on the Garmin, there's this little, if you look towards the right, there's a sudden spike of about 20 meters, and I think that's a problem you get with the Garmin sometimes when they get a puff of air on their sensor, they can misread like that. So you see those spikes, which if you're calculating the overall distance plunge, you need to eliminate those in your calculations. So that's it's it's in the right ballpark. That's quite interesting. An absolutely essential thing for a fitness watch is to have accurate heart rate tracking, and the Amazfit BIP has a optical heart rate sensor on the back, uses green LEDs that shine a light into the skin, and then looks for changes in the reflected light to calculate your heart rate. And again, in this case, I've put it up against the Polar H10 heart rate strap, which is the gold standard for fitness heart rate measurement. And you can see that the Amazfit starts off with a slightly higher heart rate for some reason, and the first few about 10 minutes I was quick walking just to warm up, and then I started running, and there it tracks up along with the Polar up to well, in the case of the Amazfit about 140, and the Polar keeps tracking up until I reach kind of a cruising heart rate, which I think is about 150, in the 150-160 range. And I think probably the Amazfit is under reading here slightly. It's the things look synchronized, but the fact that I maintain a similar pace throughout the exercise, so after 10 minutes up until about 10 minutes from the end, you have a similar heart rate on the Polar, just slightly increasing as I get warmed up. And with the Amazfit, about halfway through, it suddenly goes up to track exactly on the Polar. You also notice the Amazfit, it's taking readings every 3 to 5 seconds, and the Polar is doing a reading every second, which is why you get a more continuous line. So as you can see, in the second half of the exercise, there's a correspondence between the two, around about 160 beats a minute. And then at the very end, there's a slight uphill as I come to the end of the park, and I ran, fairly good pace for that to try and get a max heart rate reading. And you see again, the Amazfit doesn't, where the Polar tracks up in a nice ramp there, up to a max heart rate of about 180. My max heart rate's around that range anyway, just over 180. And the Amazfit kind of tops out at some point. So I think got some slight doubts about this trace. I'll have to do some more testing. Again, both they're not quite synchronized, the tracks and the traces, but the both of the heart rate values drop back down again as I start walking very quickly, and then follow each other fairly accurately. Having accurate heart rate data is useful, very useful if you're training and trying to target various training zones, for example, doing a certain amount of aerobic, anaerobic training. And in this case, we see on the bottom graph the data from the Amazfit BIP, and on the top graph, what we assume is a more accurate Polar
belt, and there's quite a big difference with the polar. We spend quite a lot of time in zone 2, a little bit of time in zone 3, so high intensity, and a lot of time in zone 1, just kind of tempo. And that's what we call a pyramidal model. So it's like a pyramid or a triangle, if you like. And if we look at Amazfit, the same run, the data looks totally different. Here it looks like we're doing polarized training. So we're doing a lot of zone 1, and we're doing a tiny little bit of zone 3, with really not much zone 2 at all. Jump miles are sometimes referred to as. So that's slightly concerning. You need to probably tune your zones a little bit to reflect the data from the watch, but the fact it didn't seem to be tracking the heart rate for a little while would be something to look into. And that translates, if we look at the actual percentage spent in each zone, we can see on the left it's the Amazfit, on the left it's the polar, where we're doing very pyramidal training. A lot of zone 1, majority zone 1, quite a lot of zone 2, and a tiny bit of zone 3. And on the right, a polarized training, very little zone 2, a good chunk, 20% at zone 3, and the rest of the time at zone 1. And this kind of pyramidal training is popular now because it's believed to give you a lot of benefits from the high intensity load, but you spend a lot of time fairly low impact, low intensity, so not overtiring the body. So if your heart rate monitor is not giving you the right information, that could be a concern.